We're live now, Chair.
Thank you, Carrie-Anne, and welcome everybody to this meeting of Powys Pension Board. We've not had any apologies, so we may have Debbie and Ian joining us during the meeting, but we are going to crack on. And so moving on from apologies, any declarations of interest? I have one. Which I must tell you that I've been appointed as a shareholder-nominated non-executive director on the board of the WPP Investment Management Company. I'll say more in my update on item 6 on the agenda on that later. I assume there's no more declarations of interest. We'll go to the minutes of our last meeting, which was held on the 11th of February. I think, as per usual on this, most of the matters we discussed are featuring again on today's agenda. But we'll perhaps just go through them for any correctness. Page 5.
Can I just check you can see those, Chair? Have they appeared on screen?
They're appearing. You're scrolling now, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a lag, but hopefully it's working. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is now. So yeah, page 6. I think we've got the operational update again. Page 7. We'll refer to that stuff. CPR we have again.
Yes.
On page 9, and then pooling updates, items 9. Risk register we are going to have a look at today, and performance measurements as well, and the fit for the future. The only correction I have, Carrie-Anne, is that you've promoted me to a county councillor in the signing off there.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you could
Thank you, Chair. I'll correct
demote me
that.
back to a civilian.
Yep.
So as we said, yeah, today's items should cover any matters arising, but happy if anyone's got something to raise from those minutes. Are we just happy to accept them as a true record as amended for my signature? No dissenting voices. I'll take that as a yes.
Chair, could we have a show of hands, please? A proposer and seconder.
Yeah.
The minutes.
I can't see people on the screen, but
I'll propose, yeah, as accurate.
thanks,
and I'll second, Chair.
Thanks, David. Good job, you're both here. Yeah, and unanimous, and thanks. Okay, Karen, we'll move on to the next item, which is, presumably there's no other matters arising. Move on to the minutes of the investment committee. And there are 2 sets here. They go back a while. The first one is the 5th of December. And in those, the item 3 is the valuation, which is item 12 on today's agenda. Then I noted on item 4, the investment strategy. I think we're coming back to the investment strategy statements at some point, but the key thing in that December meeting, the committee agreed to accept alternative 2, which was still prudent but slightly less cautious approach than initially discussed in September. And that was in the context of the fund now being more than 100% funded. So I was very pleased with that outcome on that one. Then yeah, the funding strategy statement, I think that's a useful one to mention there. We'll come back to that with evaluation, but we noted the minor amendments there. And the second one particularly, the fund now can afford to be a tad more prudent, avoiding future increases in employer contributions by increasing that surplus buffer from 105 to 110. And while being slightly more adventurous on the investment strategy, which should bring us greater returns, I think it's prudent to balance it out with that prudence on contributions. So again, I found this December meeting to be a very good one, which puts the fund in a good place moving forward. Anybody else got any matters to raise from those? As we said, it's a long time ago, really, but it was an upbeat meeting, wasn't it, Chris?
It was, Chair, yeah.
Then we got the minutes of another meeting held on 24th of February. And that was mainly to do with the Fit for the Future, which we're discussing today and has moved on with subsequent support and approval from Powys as one of the partner funds or shareholders, clients of WPP. Yeah, you can see at the end of that they were approved the shareholder agreements and the client service agreements, which was key to allowing us to move on in accordance with the legislation. So there was, I don't know if anyone wants to raise matters arising on that one. We will discuss pooling again. There was a subsequent meeting on the 25th of March, wasn't it, Chris? And
there was.
We haven't got those minutes, but perhaps we'll refer to that under a subsequent item today and under the operational update.
Yeah, I think it can be captured into that one. So I'll just reference something that was discussed at the meeting as part of that. Yeah.
Okay, so the board can see those minutes at the next meeting, but we will cover off perhaps the most important item in that agenda in today's operational update. So that I think covers item 5, unless anyone wants to raise anything. I'm getting only nods, so we'll take those as noted, carry on. And I think the next item is my verbal update as chair of the pension board. Bear with me on this one, guys, because I've got quite a bit to say today. Yeah, lots of it coming from the announcements I did on and declaring an interest at the beginning. Yeah, I've been appointed as a shareholder nominated non-executive director for the WPP IMCO board. And during February, March, I was quite proud to be nominated by the partner funds to be one of 2 shareholder directors on the board. And there were quite a few hoops to go through before that moved ahead. But in April, I received my letter of appointment from the company. And on the 14th of May, I attended the first board meeting. However, while my contract has started, you may be aware there's been a delay in transferring the partner funds, regulatory capital and investment assets until the company gets approval from the FCA. Consequently, that first IMCO board meeting was largely introductory induction training and looking at very general initial policies and not really getting into the proper business. We did look at some risks to the way forward, but we're not yet in a position to make decisions. So that it was decided I could carry on with a short overlap between this post and the new one. We sought clarity around a perceived conflict of interest and found that a non-executive director of an IM company couldn't also serve as a pension board chair for one of the participating funds. There are obligations placed on each constituent authority under the LGPS regs to avoid conflicts of interest in the context of pension board members. And the legals are that there's scope for conflicts to arise as the IMCO is the entity delivering services to the constituent authority. So there could be a conflict as the board chair might have influence over decisions of the pensions committee through his oversight role. It may be difficult for the chair to remain independent when where a pension committee might disagree with the IMCO advice, and the board chair might have a conflict of interest when they feel they should scrutinise the governance and compliance of the IMCO. So, talking about scrutinising governance and compliance, I will do that in my new role on behalf of the shareholders. And generally, I do see Powys as a shareholder pulling in the same direction as the WPP IMCO. However, as we've had that legal view, Jane and Clive, as 151 and MO, both agreed that as I'm now non-executive director of the IMCO, I'll have to resign my position as chair of your pension board. In the pro tem circumstances, my Powys contract will be terminating on 31st of May, with that perceived conflict being managed during this interim period. The IMCO won't be managing assets or advising constituent authorities' pensions committees in this period, and the transitional board of 151s retains the power to make decisions for the IMCO for the time being. So cognizant that conflicts of interest are inherent in our industry, I feel that such a brief and finite overlap can be declared at relevant meetings and managed appropriately, both from a legal and a presentational viewpoint. As I discussed with Jane, I'm fully committed to WPP, but keen to assist Powys and have a sort of managed sign-off rather than disappearing off a cliff edge in April. I've carried on with this meeting. So I've also, during this recent period, I've continued to represent Powys at several events, including the LGC seminar in Carden Park in March with Chris there, I think, wasn't it, Chris? No, he didn't make it, of course. DG Publishing's Pooling Symposium in the Belfry in April, which he did make. I went to the Wales Pension Board Chairs meeting in Cardiff on 29th of April, an LGPS North conference in York in May, and the Scheme Advisory Board session for board chairs last week, meeting the two new heads of local government pensions at MHCLG. For your information, those were these replace Theresa Clay, who has been there for several years and oversaw the sort of bringing in the new regs. But these two new people will replace Theresa. William King is on the member benefits and administration side, and Rosanna Thompson is on the investment strategy governance evaluation side. And they were quite sparky, personable people. I was quite impressed. I think that they will oversee that. They're not looking to bring in lots of new legislation, but they're overseeing the implementation of the legislation where we've seen being brought in over the last 18 months. So MHCLG told us by the end of May, there will be regulations laid on pooling and fund investments and fund governance. And there'll also be a government response technical consultation on Fit for the Future. By June, MHCLG say they'll publish pooling investment strategy statements and governance guidance. By the end of September, all LGPS assets must be held and managed by the pool, except where not reasonably practicable to do so. And then there's the end of December deadline for appointments, particularly having a fund senior officer and a committee independent person. You might think Chris is senior officer, that's no problem to us, but I think that office does carry quite a bit of responsibility, and we do need to, as a council, look at the remuneration for that post going forward. And the independent person is new for a lot of Welsh funds. There'll be a lot of posts going and a scarcity of people available, I suspect. I had inquired back in January and discussed with Aon back in September whether an independent board chair could also do the independent person, and MHCLG have agreed that is possible now. It took them about 9 months to answer, but yeah, but obviously I won't be in a position to do that going forward. On governance, MHCLG will also require governance reviews, and the timing of those will be triennial, aligned with the valuation cycles, not in the same year, trying to smooth out the load, but that will be an additional burden. On pooling and investments, administrative authorities must delegate the implementation of their investment strategy to their asset pool. Administering authorities must also take principal investment advice from their pool. That doesn't mean that we can't go to Aon for some advice. The principal investment advice is basically the asset allocation and vehicles for delivery on those asset classes. We can still take advice on other matters such as cash flow or governance, etc., from Aon going forward. But we will be required to take the principal investment advice from the pool. I don't think the pool is in a position to deliver on that yet, but and the timing, that might be a year hence. All assets must be controlled and managed by the relevant asset pool, and there'll be minimum standards for the pool, which is FCA authorization, basically. So that sort of story all squares the circle which I mentioned above, with MHCLG have made it clear that legislation will require an FCA approved IMCO for Wales. Unfortunately, the FCA are not quick in providing that authorization, so we're in a bit of a hiatus at the moment, awaiting that. And but that delay does usefully allow me to chair this meeting today, as we're not yet into the nitty-gritty of things as a company. But unless there's a very unexpected turn of events, this will be my last board meeting with you. I got to say, I've been proud and to serve as pension board chair for Powys. Really grateful for the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure working with you as members of this board, members of the committee, and the officers of the authority. So I'll continue, of course, looking out for your interests in my future role. No sort of promises of favouritism there, but naturally I'm aware of where Powys are coming from, and that will serve me well in the board of the company. So yeah, that's the end of quite a long update there, but the last one from me, guys. So So we'll get back to any questions on those issues I raised. David.
Yeah, thank you, David. I was going to ask a question about conflict of interest, but you've covered it. Yeah, that's a nice, clear explanation. And because I couldn't quite work out how you could fulfill your role and the other one, although you've given it a level of given it other layers, David, that I didn't understand. So it's nice and clear. But that was the only question I was going to ask you. But thank you for being really clear. And also I'll say that it's you've been a really good chair. Sorry to see you go. And then obviously, Chris, you'll be updating us on what will happen next, I guess, at some stage. But yeah, so thank you, David, for the explanation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. And yeah, I'm in many ways sorry to go, but excited by the new opportunity. Debbie, I didn't see you sneaking in, so thanks for joining us.
Good morning, David. Sorry, I had some IT issues this morning. Just a couple of really quick things. Just wanted to congratulate you on your appointment. That's great news for you, and obviously for the for your new role. Great for them too to have you. And thank you for all your wisdom and your guidance to us as a board. So really appreciative. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as I say, I've appreciated working with all of you, and yeah, it is an honour to be selected by peer funds, and yeah, looking forward to it. Graham?
Diolch, Dafydd. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what both David and Debbie have said. Really, just a massive congratulations and a big thank you for your knowledge and wisdom that you've brought to this chair and this board. So yeah, hard act to follow, but good luck, and glad you're staying within the wider partnership. So yeah, diolch.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I wouldn't go unless it was something still in the LGPS family in Wales. But yeah, and thank you all for those kind words. On the conflict, yeah, it's not really a conflict yet, but you can see where it would arise consistently. So it wouldn't be an option to carry on both, as David mentioned. Okay.
Before we move on, David, I haven't got a hand that I can put up in Zoom for some reason, as I mentioned earlier on. So I just put my actual hand up just again to echo everybody's comments to say thank you very much for supporting the board for the past couple of years. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and your experience has really helped drive the governance side and the administration side forward, and your experience on the investment side has really been valuable as well. So just a thanks personally from me. So I just wanted to put that down on record as well. So thank you.
Yeah, Chris, much appreciated, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Okay, in case I'm well up, we might get back to the rest of the agenda. The next item is the operational update from Chris. So take it away, mate.
Lovely. Thank you, David. As I mentioned just in the lobby before the meeting joined, I'm conscious that the meeting pack today is pretty hefty, over 250 odd pages, I think, in the private pack. So my intention with some of these reports is to go through them at a high level, but pick out the parts that I think board needs to be aware of, and provide a bit more detail on those. But please do stop me as I'm going if there's anything you want to dive into, if you feel as though I've skipped over anything. So as we move through this report then, just wanted to focus on a couple of the first points, which David has actually picked up as part of his update. The pensions bill has now been received royal assent and has become the Pension Schemes Act 2026. And off the back of that, we are expecting some regulations to be laid in the next couple of weeks. And that's essentially delivering the government's intentions on the reform of the pensions industry, which obviously captures the LGPS within that. We've touched upon the big ticket items within that regulation change as part of the update earlier on. The main ones really are the LGPS senior officer. This is a statutory role which administrative authorities must have, So there may be some work required in terms of revisiting the council's constitution, how that fits in. Debbie will be closer to this one than me, obviously, but there'll be some work just revisiting that to make sure we capture that properly. There is also a requirement to revisit the makeup of the Pension Investment Committee, because the regulations do introduce this new independent person to the Pensions Investment Committee as well. So we'll have to revisit the governance and compliance statement and the terms of reference of the Pension Investment Committee as well to make sure we capture that accordingly. Timescales are tight on both of those items. The expectation is that these will need to be in place within 6 months of when the regulations are laid. So quite a bit of work to do over the summer to make sure that we can get things through the appropriate governance channels to make sure that's all compliant. The other big ticket item is this new independent governance review. As David has already mentioned, that has to be done every 3 years, and we'll probably try and filter outside the valuation cycles so that we haven't got too much work going on at once. But I'm not sure if you mentioned, but I think the first review has to be completed by the 31st of March 2028. So we've already got a clock ticking against us in terms of getting this first review done. And there'll be no doubt some support and guidance around that to help us understand what's expected of it. I think David did mention that we're expecting the guidance to follow shortly after the regulations are laid, and we really do need to see that to support us through this period, particularly where there's timescales attached to these bits of work that we need to complete. So looking forward to getting the regulations, looking forward to getting the guidance, but there is quite a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure we can implement those as expected by the government. In addition to that, we have already seen some new legislation laid and some new regulations are in force, and that's in respect to what you see in 2.3. Phase 1 of the access and fairness reforms have been implemented, which focus on those 3 bullet points there: survivor benefits, death grants, and the requirement to review historic cases. It's called phase 1 for a reason, because we are expecting phase 2 to follow at some point. My initial understanding was that it was likely to be in 6 months' time after the 1st of April. So we're looking at potentially October for phase 2 to hit, although I'm not sure that's been confirmed yet. We are expecting that in the not too distant future. This is deemed a significant enough change in the regulations to trigger a requirement under the disclosure regulations. And what that means, essentially, we need to notify our scheme members that there's been a change to regulations. That also comes with a timescale of 3 months. So regulations change on the 1st of April. We're working to a deadline of the end of June to get these disclosure requirements out to our scheme members. And we're currently working with our communications officer and the wider Wales communications group to deliver a consistent message. We have scheme members who are in more than one fund, for example. So we want the message to be consistently received by those scheme members. So there are quite a few timescales thrown on us this year. We'll come on to the McLeod one a bit later on as well, which is something else that we need to consider. Within those regulation changes, 2.4 is just talking about some high-level changes that the administration team will have to incorporate into their processes. So we're also having to work through existing processes and considering the new requirements under these regulations going forward as well. And an additional complexity is that it's not updating all the changes, it's for new cases. So if you look at number 1, the QAPers, the team will need to understand current rules, need to understand new rules, because they are different and they do apply differently to different tranches of membership as well. So that's just a high-level example of how it's just complicated, the relationship in terms of what we tell our scheme members and our different tranches of scheme members. So there'll be quite a lot of work on the communication side happening over the next few weeks as well. Happy to stop there if there are any questions. I realise I skipped over a couple of the changes there, but I did just want to pull out for board that there's quite a lot behind these couple of bullet points here that we'll need to work on. So one of the recommendations later on is that I provide assurances to board on our progress in delivering these new sets of regulations, but we'll come on to that when we get down to the recommendations. I talked about McLeod very briefly. A McLeod remedy, the expectation is the government want us to have completed the McLeod remedy by the end of August this year. That's in line with the productions of the annual benefit statements. That's quite a big piece of work. We've been working on McLeod, and we'll dig into numbers in the confidential part of the meeting later on, so you can see the work that's happened to date. But that's an awful lot of work that we still need to get through by the end of August. So for the committee meeting on the 25th of March, I took a business case to committee to ask for some additional support to be able to try and deliver this. and that was essentially increasing the administration resource within the team. I'm pleased to say committee accepted that challenge and supported the business case that I took. So we're in the process of strengthening and actually building a McLeod project team to focus on McLeod solely. We've currently got 2 full-time members of staff working full-time on McLeod, and we're looking to backfill their posts because we've moved them across from the main business as usual administration team into the McLeod team. So backfilling those posts and also using third parties where appropriate and relevant for support. But we also have developed some tools using Copilot and AI, for example, to try and help our administration team deliver on this. And we've developed one worksheet which we think has saved between 30 and 40% calculation time in respect of working out final pays. Final pays are an important part of the McLeod work. We've already developed some tools which are helping to trim the amount of time taken to do that. So we're working towards that deadline. Committee is supportive of what we need to do that, and I'll make sure I regularly update board on progress towards that objective. We may find ourselves in the position where by the 31st of August we haven't completed the McLeod work. So just for board's understanding what that means, unless things change, that'll likely be a breach of the legislation, the regulations, which will require us to notify the regulator. On conversations we've had within the industry, if we find ourselves in this position, the regulator is going to be keen to understand what have we done, what progress have we made, and how do we plan to tackle any remaining work. So it's just to tee that one up for the board now that if we find ourselves in those positions, we are aware of what that might mean, and so we can make the appropriate preparations if needs be. But we're hoping and working as fast as we can towards that deadline at the end of August. As I say, I will keep board updated. And in fact, as part of the reporting later on, you'll see in our first report on the numbers and how we're progressing against that as well. So I'll go into that in more detail later on. But I just wanted to make board aware of that's what we've done since we last met. And we are working as hard as we can towards that deadline. I'll just pause there, Chair, in case there's any questions on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I was cited on this as I was at that committee meeting. But the just to bring it home to the item submitted today, the recommendation asks us to note and seek assurance that appropriate arrangements are in place to manage the risks and regulatory changes outlined. So really, I was pleased that the Pensions Investment Committee held on 25th of March did support Chris with the approval of additional resources to recruit or commission work to proactively manage this, I think, because these regulatory challenges and changes, there's McLeod, there's dashboards and all that, but I think once dashboards come online, unless we do some proactive work to get ourselves in place early doors, not just for the regulator, but we could be faced with some failure demand in terms of being unable to reconcile figures for our scheme members who are inquiring, and that inquiry then generating more work. Whereas if we can do some proactive work early doors, that will reduce that work secondly. So I'm 100% supportive. I think it's a welcome positive that the Pensions and Investment Committee did support the scheme manager in March, and this is in the context, of course, of a time of unprecedented change in the LGPS. I was keen, although those minutes were not tabled today, I was keen for you to be aware of those facts as a board to help gain the assurance that we'll be in a proper position to manage risks and changes. I can't see any hands up.
Shall I move on then, Chair? Oh, David.
Oh, David's there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just I suppose I shouldn't be surprised really, but there's a lot of work going on there, Chris, and you mentioned about quite a few timescales this year, and I think that's probably a bit of an understatement, I think, really. And it's great that the Pension Investment Committee have supported the extra resources. I mean, I suppose it's around really. I mean, do you think the team's resilient enough? Because the team must be under a lot of pressure at the moment and feel it. And
Yeah.
is the resilience in the team, and that's beyond having the extra capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a team meeting last week, actually, David, where we discussed this. We've been discussing it for a
Right,
while.
right, right.
I think the team are aware that it's going to be a challenge. This next 12 months is going to be a real challenge,
Yeah,
but we have
yeah,
built this project plan, and we really
yeah,
do believe that this time in 12 months, we're
yeah,
setting the fund up for a really good place to tackle the ongoing challenges. I think it's understood that this next period is going to be hard. It is going to be hard.
yeah. It will be.
Um,
Mm, mm.
we have started. We've been, as you'd be aware, we've been growing the team steadily over the past few years,
Yeah,
actually, to arrive
yeah,
at this place. We have been doing some work on the data, just picking up on the comment that the chair made then.
yeah,
One of our newer posts is to systems and data.
yeah,
And we are trying our best to try and maximize the use of technology and efficiencies where we can help systems do the work for us. But to answer your question, we're trying to build in that resilience. We're
right.
completely aware of the impact this is going to have on the team going forward. If we're moving people out of the business as usual team, we've
Yeah,
already established we've got the right numbers for business as usual now. As soon as you start pulling people out of that team, it's going to have an impact on the BAU. So we are avidly monitoring stats, KPIs to make sure we're on top of that. And if we're not, it's pleasing to know we've got the support from committee to go out and do something about it quickly. And the way we presented the business case was not necessarily in a fixed way, it was to allow us to be nimble. Because as we're developing new tools, that changes things and perspectives and whatnot can change around that. And what I'm thinking is if I use this pay sheet example, that's saved 35-40% time, which we can allocate somewhere else. So trying to maximize those is going to try and help the team over the next 12 months as well. But completely understand, completely aware, acutely aware of the challenges we're going to be facing over the next 12 months. And that's why I presented the recommendation this way, for me to be able to provide the assurances to board every meeting to say, look, this is where we are. We've identified an issue. This is how we're going to tackle it. So hopefully that helps give you some assurances that we are looking
yeah, it
at
does.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
I think going forward, David, we're in a better place in terms of the staff structure than when I joined a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
We've bolstered the professional ranks there, and I think we'll see the benefits of that going forward. And I think all LGPS funds are under the same stress at the moment. It's not unique to us, but some are more under more strain due to the lot of staff churn at the moment, particularly senior officers in LGPS. Lots moving from funds to pools, moving between pools, moving between funds. I've never seen churn like it. So there is a risk there that while we're well staffed and well structured at the moment, we might be in a position of losing someone at least temporarily and finding difficulty appointing going forward. So I think we'll revisit that under the risk register
Yes.
slightly later. But I'm sort of concerned with that, but also reassured that that there've been some very positive moves with staffing over the years when I've been chairing this board.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Chair. Just in the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly skip over the next couple of bits. It's just, again, to make board aware that there've been some changes to complaints and the way we have to hold data and whatnot. So we'll make sure we update processes accordingly. The Scheme Advisory Board update is there for your information. We're expecting some further guidance from them on those 2 bullet points ahead of you, in front of you. Pension dashboards we have touched upon. Again, just to reassure board, we connected to the dashboard environment in accordance with the timescales. It's the end of October we were connected by, which is our expectation of when we needed to be. We have been working on the data since then. One of the projects that our systems officer is working on at the minute is data quality. We're going to revisit the data quality plan that we have in place in this next few months as well, just to make sure it satisfies all the requirements and needs for the dashboard. Excuse me. But we don't know the real world impact on the administration team until the dashboard launches. We can do all the prep work we can, get the data in a good place, and that's part of what this project we were talking about earlier on is going to do. But until it goes live and is actually being used and tested, we don't know the real world impact on the administration team. The regulators issued some documentation to support us with that, and those are captured in those bullet points there. And they've also produced some fact sheets to support the teams around impersonation fraud as well, just making board aware that that's available. Trying to wrap all that up, I tried to do that in section 5, essentially, to say, look, we've identified some new risks, and these are the actual implications and impact on the fund. So those bullet points in 5.1 around the risk, compliance, regulatory compliance risk, operational risk, I think we've discussed those already. Data risk, in fact, we've picked that one up as well. And the member outcomes risk. It's important to remember in all of this that we are here to administer the pension scheme for our scheme members. So it's important that we do that in accordance with the law and that we make it as clear as possible in terms of what we're doing for that. There's governance implications, and we talked about those as well, about how we might have to reframe and revisit terms of reference, constitutions, etc., to make sure that we align with the regulatory expectations. We've also talked about the administration implications as well. It's very, very complicated, so we need to make sure our team is trained and aware of these changes to actually administer the scheme accordingly. So a real whistle-stop tour through the impact, but I tried to wrap up everything that was going on within section 5 for board's information. So hopefully that's just giving you some assurances around I'm aware of what is happening and is coming and is already here and how we're going to tackle it. So that's why I've just reframed the recommendation in this one, just to say, be aware of the contents of the report and to make sure that I provide you with the appropriate assurances of the next few meetings. So I'll stop there, Chair, if that's okay, and I'll hand it back to board for any further questions or comments.
Thank you, Chris. That's a really good report. Thanks for taking the time to put that together for us. It's so much going on at the moment, and yeah, it's a matter of keeping all those plates spinning and trying not to let any drop. But that's almost an impossible task in the current context. Yeah, well, I'm sure we're pleased that the committee has supported you with the resources, and I think we should endorse that as part of the decision on this item. I can't see any hands up. I think you've satisfied us that you're dealing with matters as best we can, really. Yeah, there are matters like the Chief Pensions Officer role, which need sorting above your pay grade as well. So that's for others to give attention to as well going forward. So yeah, thanks for the report. We'll note that and note that we're pleased that the committee has been able to support you with the resources.
Thanks,
okay.
Can I just check, David, before we move on? Carry on. Do we need a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation at all, or are we able to move on?
No, just as it's for noting, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, diolch, Chris. Staying with you on this one, the pensions regulator, I think this is one of the reports which has lots of pages, but
yes,
there's not been a lot of change on these, so perhaps we can do a whistle stop through this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Chair. That was exactly the context I was going to frame this in. It was really to give board the assurance that we're looking at it. Just give a bit of background, just so I can bring you up to where we are. The new code from the regulator was launched in 2024. At that point, I carried out a high-level analysis of the existing code and the current code, so a gap analysis essentially, to see if I could identify any areas where we needed to strengthen. And we were in a pretty good place, to be honest, because of all the work we'd done with the board and governance before the new code was launched, there weren't that many areas we need to focus on. So a lot of the red, amber, green charts that you'll see on the next few pages are from that initial high-level gap analysis. I then did a light touch review in 2025, and in late 2025, we appointed a governance officer. So since that point, we've been doing a much deeper dive into the code of practice, and essentially, I'm asking the governance officer to provide an update for me and for board at each meeting. So with that in mind, we've done the high-level reviews initially. We're now into deeper dive stuff. So one of the things we're doing as we're working through this now is we're actually understanding that we're trying to reconcile the filing system and operation that we have within the section as well. I'm sure people will know that the more you file, it can be difficult to keep on top of things sometimes. So we're using this as an opportunity to signpost our team members to documents and evidence and whatnot. Conscious that I've been carrying a lot of this over the past few years, so I know where everything is, but we've been growing the team recently. They need to know where to access information and whatnot as well. So we're using this exercise as a way to document and link and signpost within our SharePoint site for the appropriate evidence and information the team need. So since we last met, we have completed our review of the administration section. And if you remember last time, we talked about how one of the arrows had changed colors from, I think it was green to amber or amber to red even. We've carried out a similar exercise looking at the communications and the disclosure section of the code. And the items we've flagged for further work essentially are that the communications policy is due for review. So we'll consider that at some point this year and get that updated accordingly. And we have also made some improvements to some of the wording in our complaints letters. We've signposted some more support available for scheme members at the Money Helper, and some other links within our letters to more information around complaints for our scheme members as well. So it's been a useful exercise in respect of that. We've strengthened a couple of documents and processes. We've also started looking at the information handling section, and where, as I mentioned, we're looking at a way of documenting standards and formally signposting our team to be able to find evidence information. The next few points just reinforce that we're looking at different areas of the code. The governing body section has commenced, and we're looking at the board structure and activity subsection. I'm not going to go through it in any detail. Really, what I wanted to do as part of this item was to give board the reassurance that we're now looking at this in a lot more detail. I meet weekly where possible with the governance officer and the pension administration manager to review this. That's part of the knowledge sharing exercise to strengthen resilience within the team. It doesn't all sit with me anymore. I am filtering that down into the team as we go. Really, what I want to do as part of this exercise is just to scroll through the high-level reports for board, just so you can see that in the main, the red, amber, green bars are to the left of, to the right of the bars in the green. I think you remember last time, there's nothing wrong with us not being 100% compliant. But the closer to the right, we do need to be in the green areas of these bars rather than in the amber and the red. Obviously, if we're in the amber or red, we'll need to take some urgent action to remedy that. So I wasn't going to go into any in-depth detail on this, apart from to scroll through and just point out, look, in the main, we are in the green areas, and there's nothing wrong with us not being 100% to the right. There will be areas that we will never get there, but we have processes in place to ensure that we are in a good place. There's a lot of detail behind how we've arrived at these red, amber, green charts, and that's what follows as I'm scrolling through now. There's a real lag on my system, I'm afraid, so it's not scrolling very smoothly this end. But again, hopefully you've had the chance to scroll through the documents and can see that in the main, from a governance perspective and in compliance with the code, we're in a good place. That was really what I was going to spend the time talking about at this item, Chair. Provide that assurance. We're looking at a lot more than I'm used to, a lot more detail, and we'll regularly report any developments to board through the covering report. I'll stop there. I appreciate that's really high level, but I will take obviously any questions or any comments or thoughts the board may have. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's good that you're doing this gap analysis and looking at it. There's, as we said earlier, there's a lot of information there, lots of it unchanged really, but It's useful for us to get this information. Any questions on that? No hands up, Chris. So I think we've all read it. It's as we said, quite comprehensive, and we've said before where we're not compliant, it's not being laggardly. It's not being 100% on some of these things rather than being way off the mark.
Yeah, perhaps if I just add to that, Chair, there's nothing within this review that has made any alarm bells ring. I've not been overly concerned by anything within the code that I think I'd need to sort that out. The biggest item was the cybersecurity policy, and if you remember that we discussed that towards the end of last year, that will now be going to our committee in July for formal approval. So I've taken on board's comments at the time, and that'll be going for approval in the July committee. That was the big ticket item in terms of where the gap was. So we've addressed that, and it's now a case of regularly reviewing.
Thank you, Chris. May I take it then? Members are happy to accept the report. Yeah. Diolch yn fawr. And so that's the TPR. The next item is the WPP. We like these acronyms in LGPS, don't we? And this is really the business as usual update, isn't it, Chris?
Yes.
Rather than so much to do with the company, etc., but more of what's been done over the last year. So, yeah, do you want to take us through this again? There's lots of pages, and things are business as usual, so there's not too much that we need to highlight here, perhaps.
No, I would agree. Yeah, thanks, Chair. So obviously the cover report will be one you're familiar with in terms of the providing some detail for the appendices. Appendices A through to D are the usual quarterly ones that are provided by the WPP. The additional ones this time they begin on page 107, I think, I made a note of earlier on, which is the WPP's business plan for the next 12 months. It's been framed in the context that this is really a transitional period as we move from the existing WPP arrangements across to the new world in terms of the investment management company. So that's required us to revisit how we do things and what we do and what we will be focusing on over the next 12 months. So if we look at page 107, let's start there. That is, once my computer catches up, this is the business plan that was agreed by Joint Governance Committee at their meeting in March, and then agreed by our Pension Investment Committee in their meeting the 25th of March as well. Again, I won't go into the detail, but it's just setting out the focus of the WPP from a Joint Governance Committee perspective, probably from the client side of the IMCO world, with the understanding that this really is a transitionary year whilst we work together to build that relationship and operational governance structure. So I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it's just setting out how it all fits together. There's a governance diagram there in front of you about how it'll all work in the real world once the company's up and running, and how the Joint Governance Committee fits into this new structure. It exists as it does. It will exist as it does now. It'll have support from the officer working group made up of the senior pension fund officers like Section 141 officers and myself. It will then feed into the shareholder board, which is really the decision-making body under the new arrangements. And that will be made up of the Section 141 officers who are going to be acting on the decisions made by the Joint Governance Committee and implementing those with the IMCO board. So that's useful in terms of visually seeing how the new structure will operate. And then the business plan then goes on to say other areas of focus over the next 12 months as well. Very similar to what we've had previously, but we just have to acknowledge it's a little bit lighter because a lot of the responsibilities now moved across to the investment management company. And that business plan follows later on as well. So at a high level, this is a new document in terms of what's the usual appendices or attachments to this report, but it's been approved by Joint Governance Committee and our Pensions Committee at the end of March. it's there for your information to see how that will work. Perhaps a bit more interesting in terms of, because it's new, is the investment management company have also produced their own business plan. Again, this is a transitionary one, but it's been provided alongside a covering letter from Rob Lamb, the Chief Executive of the IMCO. So that's available on page 129. And that's basically setting out Rob's views and thoughts about how he's going to act on our behalf as clients and shareholders of the IMCO. So he's got a covering letter setting out a bit of context, and then from page 130, I think it is, 131, there's the actual investment management company business plan for the financial year as well. And within that, Rob sets out the 8 objectives essentially. He's got an executive summary about how he's going to allocate the budget for the first 12 months. But then as we scroll through, we get into the actual nitty gritty of what the business plan is focusing on. Bit of history, obviously very short history. And then this sets out the strategic objectives of the next 12 months. So again, if you've not had the chance to read, this is what Rob and the IMCO will be looking at over the next 12 months, and sets out how he's going to look to achieve it as well. So I think within there's 8 objectives that Rob has set out. And obviously as clients and shareholders within the IMCO, we're going to be feeding into this over the next 12 months as well. Rob set this out with the understanding that this is the transitionary year. I think his view is that, I think he mentions it within here, he'd like to set out a longer term business plan. It is an investment management company after all, and investments by their nature tend to be longer term. So it's entirely appropriate to set out a longer vision in terms of investments and approach to investments as well. So whilst we're seeing this in terms of a 12-month business plan initially, the expectation is, I think by the end of next April, we'll see a longer term business plan from the IMCO as well. So again, I wasn't going to go through it in detail. It is there for you to have a read of, so you can see the objectives. I will pause there before I just quickly move on to the responsible investment policy, Chair, in case there's anything that you wanted to add or any questions from board about the report and the attachments. So
yeah, I think I need to emphasise again that I have declared an interest on this as a director of the company. So I think it's something perhaps I shouldn't speak too
fair enough.
much on. Perhaps I will say just a little that just to reiterate what you said, Chris, that the WPP's aims this year are to establish the company, to appoint the people, to get regulatory approval, to transfer the funds, etc., and to give an element of continuity. The pool in Wales is in a very different place to some of the pools in England. I was talking to Trevor Castledine in York last week, and Trevor is in a senior position in Central Pool, which is one of the biggest ones now. They're onboarding a lot of new LGPS funds, and their challenge is very different. Whereas we've got our investment vehicles and we're trying to transition those from a partnership to a company. The challenge in some of the other pools like Central is that they're going from they're more than doubling the number of funds involved in their pool. So they're onboarding assets from, I think it's about 10 new funds, and they've got about 100 manager lines, so 100 different mandates for listed assets, active managers, etc., for Central. And Trevor's aim for this year is to whittle that down from 100 to something like 30. So their activity direction is challenged and focused on an entirely different matter to us this year. Yeah, it's horses for courses insofar as how the legislation has challenged different pools. And talking to Rob, the aim in WPP is to get this plan for 1 year, but by next March, I anticipate that the each of the 8 pensions committees will have received a new business plan, which will cover a period of some 5 years and will entail some change in investment direction. But that's secondary at the moment, and it's a matter of establishing the company is the first priority at this point in time. I won't say any more, Chris.
No, that's fair. So apologies for putting you in that position there, Chair.
No,
So
no,
thank you.
that's fine.
So, David, super question.
Yeah, quick question. I'm just thinking back, Chris, to the point that you
Mm.
made around the triennial governance reviews.
Yeah.
The whole structure is more complex than it has been for a long time. I mean, is any thought being given to board and committee training being strengthened, given the fact that there will be some sort of triennial governance review?
Yes, great question, David. And yes, it has been. So you might be aware that as part of the recruitment made into the team towards the end of last year, one of the officers is a training officer. So I've been working with them, knowing that within the regulations, there's an increased expectation on training requirements for committee.
Yeah.
Currently, board and committee have different expectations placed on them, as you'll be aware. That's being aligned. So we're building a tool now to help us record and monitor training. And the thought I've had is that whilst we've got a captive audience at meetings, it makes sense to try and maybe just put on some bite-sized training as well at each meeting to audience. So yes, we've got a business plan in terms of WPP, IMCO, WPP, and the fund have also got a business plan as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to structure the training around what's on the horizon. So yes, to answer your question directly, yes, there will be more training. We have got a training officer to help support me with delivering that as well.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, good point, David. And on training, we've as board members have always been required to have had training and have knowledge, etc. Whereas committee members, there's been a gap in the legislation, but it's now going to be a statutory requirement for committee members to be trained. That again is going to be a bit of a challenge for English authorities going forward now and for Welsh authorities next year when there may be some churn in membership of councils and consequently churn in members of pensions committees perhaps. So training going forward generally is going to be a statutory requirement, not just for us but for the committee as well. And the WPP IMCO will continue to provide training as WPP have in the past. So those sessions will continue. And things like the governance review, I'm sure there'll be sessions put on by people like the companies like Aon and by the Scheme Advisory Board. So those challenges are common to all 88 LGBS funds. So that will I'm sure feature severally in such training opportunities.
Yeah, I'll make sure I share any information I see about those as well. So board and committee have got as much opportunity as possible to attend any sessions. I guess just one final point on that from me is just to give board the assurance we knew this was coming. That's why we strengthened the training aspect within the officers at the fund level as well. So I'm grateful to have some support to be able to put that on there as well in a dedicated training officer. So thank you, Chair. Okay for me to move on then. I won't go into this in any detail, but one other thing that was approved at the Joint Governance Committee in March was a revised responsible investment policy. That's been included for board's information as well as part of this pack. I won't go into the detail of it, but it's just been expanded to include an exclusions framework around investing as well. So if you're interested in how that might operate, there's some more detail within the new responsible investment policy, which is one of the appendices. So I was going to leave it there, Chair, in the interest of time, if that's okay.
Yeah, lots of information there, and we'll no doubt return to this in future, Chris.
Yes.
So
I'll make sure I keep board updated. Yeah.
what was the recommendation on this one? It was
Note the contents of the report in the appendices.
note the
is probably,
contents. So
I think
again,
so.
if everybody is happy to note the contents, we can move on. No dissenting voices, and I don't think Carrie-Anne needs a vote. So the next item is just the standing items with no updates required. And I don't think there's a lot to report here. No new
No.
breaches recorded since the last meeting.
No. So it's just presented information, essentially, Chair. So
we take that as read. Everybody happy to receive that and move on? Thank you very much. And the next item is the risk register, which we've referred to already, but yeah, we've got an update now on, and the whole gamut of risk registers are submitted today. We haven't really gone into this for a couple of meetings, but Chris has mentioned a couple of risks already, and those are highlighted in 3 bullet points in part 2.2 of his report. So I don't know how you want to cover this, Chris. Do you want to go to the risk register itself and highlight where those 3 might appear?
well, I thought there might be a couple of ways we could approach this, Chair. So
Yeah.
I'll leave this with the board. We've obviously had some discussion today around risks, and we've had a couple of bits of dialogue about it. These are the 3 that I pulled out in consultation with yourself, actually, obviously. We could look at now where they might sit, which risk register you feel they sit upon, and work through that item now, or we could perhaps leave it with me to consider. I could slot them into the risk registers and share those risk registers via email. The intention is, where I want to land after this, is that I can take something to committee in July to say, look, we've worked with board to identify these risks, and this is what we think they are. Please, can you take on board their recommendations to include them into the risk register, please? So it's how best we arrive at that point. So perhaps if you work back from that. The 3 risks, obviously we have the 3 pillars: governance, admin, and investment. What we could do is we could have a look at where we think these might sit, I guess, and then I could go away and build them and then share them with board after the meeting. But the first risk identified was a transition and operation risk associated with the implementation of the IMCO. And what I was thinking with this is, as part of onboarding with the IMCO, we've had to arrange some new custodian arrangements and whatnot. There's lots of dialogue that will have to take place between ourselves, the investment management company, Russell Investments potentially, and Northern Trust as the custodian. So my concern is that that's lots of moving parts. We need to make sure we have a process in place that's able to monitor all those working parts. Now I meet weekly with the investment management company to discuss this, but I think it's only right that we identify that this is changing from the current arrangements. So we need to make sure that we've got the assurances in place to manage this potentially new operational risk. So whilst it's related to the investment management company, it does feel more of a governance and a process risk to me. But rather than me just slotting it into the governance risk register, I wanted to chat that through with the board if they felt that was appropriate. And if not, where do you think this might sit otherwise? And this is in particular focusing on the operational side of things, moving money between the entities and keeping oversight of that. So perhaps I frame it like that, Chair, and have a quick discussion about it as to where you think it might fit. I can then build the risk in the risk register and share it after the meeting. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, that's fine. And as you said, yeah, those 3 areas we identified together really. And the first one is plain for everybody to see really, and I'm not sure where it might fit in the risk register.
We have got a pooling risk already, WPP. I can't remember off the top of my head which risk register that sits under, unfortunately, but perhaps I could expand it if that's the case, or
Yeah.
if not, if it is an additional risk. It does feel like a governance one to me because it's operational.
Yeah, I think the pooling pension fund assets is in the investment risk.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's on page 169 of the pack. So rather than moving it, perhaps expand on that there. It has been reviewed last week according to this, so
Oh, right.
I'm not sure. No, sorry, it's a year ago.
There we are. That's appropriate then for review.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be appropriate to review that that now. Perhaps it's
Oh, we could do.
Invest 008 or something there. So yeah, I'm there's lots of attention being given to this, and as Chris has assured me from one end, I've been assured by Andrew Johnson in the company that those weekly meetings are going ahead and these risks we managed. But I think our register needs to evidence that. So shall we ask Chris to add something in there for the next committee to approve?
Yeah, sounds reasonable, David. Yeah,
I'll do that then.
Chris
That's
is okay with it,
008.
of course.
Yeah. And what I will do is I'll build the risk and I'll adapt this and I'll share that with board after the meeting, so we can just get an informal approval via email, and I'll take it forward. Appreciate that. Thank you.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Just scroll back up to the ones we identified. I think it's probably key person risk was the next one, or recruitment and retention perhaps. I should have made a note of the page number before I jump forward.
Oh,
here we are.
I don't know if that's given 003 on page 161.
So recruitment and retention risk across the LGPS. Yeah. So this is in respect of the comment that the chair made earlier on. We have seen lots of officers moving back and forth between funds and pools and whatnot, and I think that brings associated risks with it. So you mentioned what governance risks, sorry, Chair?
I'm not sure if I'm right there, Chris, but given 003 on page 161 identifies being able to deliver service
yeah,
as a result of loss or over-reliance on key personnel, etc., and delivering to new regulations. So that's associated.
yeah.
It's it could be in the admin one as well, but I think it's if you add something into that one, it would.
I will do. Yeah, let's try that approach perhaps, and I'll see how it fits.
And then the last one is implementation of new regulations. Could be the same one actually, because govern 003 does refer to the regulations. They may be somewhere else as well.
I'll check on that then. Yeah, I'll check. Actually, looking at govern 0009, lack of expertise of pension fund officers. No, that's training. That's a training one, actually, isn't it? That is, yeah.
Sorry, 008. It could be the
yes
regulations on page 163 at the bottom there.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yep, that's where I can slot the regulation one in. Yeah, that seems to make sense.
Okay. So we found a space for those three newish risks. I think we have, haven't we?
I think so. Yeah. I'll update those risks then. As I say, I'll share them with board, and if board are happy, then I can then take them forward as proposal to committee.
That'll be good. Yeah. Members with anything else to raise on the risk register? As we said, Chris and myself did discuss these beforehand and raised those three as the additional things going forward. And I think we've got an officer looking at this going forward as well, which
yes,
will bring this back to you in future.
That's correct. Yeah. So that was the item, Chair. Because we're making
so We need to make a recommendation to the committee on this to
Yes.
ensure those three risks are covered within the register going forward, yeah?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay, can we have a show of hands for that, please? Yep, I can see Graham and Debbie I think, yeah.
Chair, could we just have proposer and seconder and then a show of
Oh,
hands?
sorry, yeah. We'll formalise that. Anybody? Yeah, Debbie's proposing, Graham seconding. I can't see everybody on screen at the same time. Sorry, probably David did as well. But we're yeah, everybody in favour? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carrie-Anne, keeping me in shape here. So right, we'll covered off that item. So the next item is the valuation report, which is a very detailed paper. It's actually been to the committee, and to some extent it's done and dusted, and we've discussed some of the issues in it. But I think it's worth Chris mentioning some of the highlights contained within that. So Chris, do you want to?
Yep, I can pick that up. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so as David's rightly mentioned, this has gone through committee. It's published on the website already, so it's presented today for board's information. It's just due to the timings. This is the first meeting I could bring it to. So a lot of detail in there. At high level, the results are very positive for the fund. So as a result of this valuation, the fund has found itself in a surplus for the first time ever of approximately nearly £30 million, which has resulted in a funding level of 103.4%. That's up from just under 100% at the previous valuation, which is very pleasing to see. And as David's already mentioned, that enables us to build in some flexibility into how we approach certain aspects of the investment and the liability side now. I guess the headline item as a result of that is the impact on the employer contribution rate. As a result of the fund being in a surplus position, the overall fund contribution rate has reduced by 4.9% to 16.5%, as you can see on screen in front of you. And what that has resulted is in the majority of the fund's employers also being either 100% funded or above. So at a high level, this has been a really positive result for the fund, but also the employers within the fund as well. They've all seen their funding levels increase, and as a result, their contribution rates in the main coming down as well. In addition to that, we did talk earlier on about being able to increase the prudence. So whilst we've also seen the funding level improve and the contribution rates come down, we've also been able to build in some additional prudence into it as well. So another really positive thing is that we've been able to take some risk off the table in terms of that as well. So not only have we seen our funding level go up, contribution rates come down, we've been able to build in some additional risk management into it as well. So really positive valuation results. And so the first time the fund has found itself in a surplus position as well. So off the back of that, there is some additional work that needs doing with regards to our employer policy. We have got an employer policy in place. But what that needs to do is that needs to make sure it accurately reflects potentially different funding positions that employers now find themselves in terms of being over 100% and whatnot. So the employer policy is on my radar to look at in the not too distant future. That's the high level results. Happy to stop there before I dive into just a couple of new items in this year's report, Chair, in case there's any comments or from board.
Well, it's just so great to have that contribution level come down to 16.5% as a primary and overall contribution rates, and it helps the council going forward with the current year budget and future years. It's reduced quite considerably from 21.3%, and I think what's also, as Chris has said, that's been achieved that's been achieved by returns to the fund, which is to be congratulated. And it's also things like the actuarial assumptions. If we look at things like bond yields now, a year on from the valuation date, I think we'd probably be even better funded than we were 13 or 14 months ago. So the that's due to complexities of the market in terms of bond yields and how geopolitical events impact on that. But the situation has been achieved without being imprudent. In fact, as Chris said, being slightly more prudent with the buffer, so we don't have fund employers facing increases, hikes in contribution rates in the future, because that really would hurt. We wouldn't want the trampoline effect of going down further and bouncing back up, because that's then tantamount to a cut of that percentage in the pay bill. So it's a really good report and good news. Not news by now, but good to have it formalised in the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to draw board's attention just at high level. I won't go through the detail. There's a couple of newish items. One was in the last valuation report and is in there again this year. That's in terms of some climate scenario modelling that has to be included now as a regulation. So if I could get my screen to load, I'll be able to tell you which page that is on. But there's some climate scenario modelling in there, which shows the impact on the fund's liabilities along different trajectories of risk. So that's been modelled in a bit more detail than it was in the last valuation report. But there's also a section on there on, it's quite timely actually, on the difference in pensions between the two genders, between male and female. And again, unfortunately, it's not loading very well. I can't show you the page. But this is the first time we've included information on the gender pensions gap. And I don't know if you heard the news yesterday, but the Pensions Commission produced a report yesterday, an interim report that's setting out basically the position around pension saving within the UK. I think they identified that there's 18 million people that are currently not saving enough towards pension benefits. And it also sets out the gender pay gap as well in terms of differences between pensions between male and female. We've captured that information at a high level within this report as well. So we'll be monitoring that over time, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see more focus on this area as we move forward, particularly with the interim report that was released yesterday by the Pensions Commission. So if you haven't had the chance to read that, it's some interesting headlines within that. There's a lot of focus on the pension industry at the minute. I expect that to continue based on that report that came out yesterday. So those are the two items that I really wanted to pull out of this report, Chair. The fact that there's some climate scenario modelling and this gender pay gap analysis is also included for the first time as well. So that was where I was going to leave that report. There's a lot of detail in there should you want to go and read it, if you haven't already read it.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, lots of detail. And good to have the reports going to the board. So thank you for that. Just to be noted today, I think.
Yes.
So we'll do that. And future board meetings is the next item. Those are noted there, 17th of July and 22nd of October. Sadly, I won't be joining for those, but I'm sure you'll find someone else to chair in my place. And just noting those again. So moving forward from there, we're now going to the confidential session of the agenda. I'm trying to scroll. I'm scrolling madly my end as well now, Chris, through that valuation report. Are there words for me to say here, Carrie-Anne?
If we could just have a brief explanation of the reason we need to go into confidential, and then we'll go for proposer, seconder, and show of hands again.
Okay, so the matters we're going to discuss now are going to have some business, not secrets, but confidential information therein, so that it justifies the press and public being excluded, and they're relate to the financial and business affairs of the fund and of the pool. So can we have a show of hands if we're happy to go into Part B, please?
Chair, could we have a proposer and seconder?
Proposer,
Sorry.
Aye. Yeah, Graham's got his hand up and Debbie, so proposer and seconder. Everybody in favour? Okay.